So Proverbs 6 starts off with saying that there are 6 things which the Lord hates. 7, yes, 7, which are an abomination to him. So when we're looking at this list, we see that there are 7 things listed, and yet there are 6 things that he hates. First time to look at this, to be honest with you, I noticed in this list that lying is mentioned twice, and so I thought that was the abomination, and he hated the rest in this list. But it's actually not that case. He sees all of these as an abomination. And with that, as there's 7 being listed, and with lying being one of them, that makes the list down to 6. And so all 6 are an abomination to the Lord. What I wanted to point out with this list, as it is something I'm sure we can all agree on and easily understand on why these are sins. But I want to point out that throughout this lesson is how we are to see sin. As we are to see sin the same way that God sees sin. And the first thing we have is the haughty eyes. Have you ever encountered someone that looks down on others? They think they're better and wiser and stronger than others. How do they make you feel? What are your thoughts about that person that does something like this? I'm sure it may be some negative feelings or thoughts towards that person. As no one wants to be looked down on, made or feel low, less smart, less important. This is what haughty eyes are. As it is described, that the definition in various areas that I found was they are lifted up by a source or by oneself. They're exalted. Another definition is that they lift oneself up above another. So overall, it's pride, arrogance, and conceit. When we look at haughty eyes, we see it mentioned in another verse later on in Proverbs. Proverbs 21, chapter 21, verse 4. And it mentions that haughty eyes and a proud heart, the lamp of the wicked is sin. And what I found very interesting within that verse, made me kind of go down a little rabbit hole for a little bit, was that the lamp of the wicked is sin. And so when I looked at that, it's referencing Luke 11, verses 33 through 36. And it says this: "No one, after lighting a lamp, puts it away in a cellar under a basket, but on a lampstand, so that those who may enter may see the light. The eyes is the lamp of your body. When your eyes is clear, your whole body also is full of light. But when it is bad, your body also is filled with darkness. Then watch out that the light in you is not darkness. If therefore your whole body is full of light, with no dark part in it, it will be wholly illuminated when the lamp illuminates you with its rays." So our eyes are like a lamp to our body. When we see good or bad, it fills our body. It begs the question, how much of your body is filled with darkness? What darkness are you allowing in your body? I know this section of text of Luke doesn't really discuss haughty eyes, but it is talking about everything that we see, including what we read, watch, continually to look at and listen to. Everything that we can bring in, it affects us to some degree. And as it may affect us to some degree, it may reflect on how we behave throughout our lives, as it is something that the more you're around, the more it becomes of you. It's almost like watching a scary movie. You become very frightened, and you like that joy and that excitement. And then so you go watch another, and then you find that after 20 or 50 scary movies, you're no longer affected by the scary scenes because you kind of became so numb to it all. Is that something that we should be numb to? The biggest part of all of this is that the heart is filled with pride. When the heart is filled with pride, the body is filled with darkness. Pride is the root of all things on this list, as we will continue to read and see. And so what we see play a big part in what we do is, as the saying goes, monkey see, monkey do. A lying tongue can be one of those things. As we see in verses 17b is how I labeled it. Lying is, again, an easy one to fall into. We all have, all we have to do really is to convince ourselves that it's okay, right? As soon as we say, oh, if I twist the truth just enough so I don't get in trouble, or so I don't get in trouble a lot, or too much, or just a little bit, I am now telling myself it is okay to say this then. Because I may be telling the truth, but a partial of the truth. And this may be because we're afraid of telling the truth and facing the full-on punishment for that. We may be afraid of having someone look down on us, make us feel like we're low or not smart, less important, right? We don't want to cause someone to have haughty eyes to us, so we may lie to try to avoid that. There's many reasons why someone may convince themselves lying is okay. And as there are many reasons why one should tell the truth. We see here that lying is one action God sees as a sin and hates it above all. If God hates lying, we should hate lying. And how simple is that? I wish there was an easy way of stopping this action. Personally, I used to struggle with this one. As a kid, and as my teen years, I made up stories just so I can get people's laughs. I claim them as true stories. I remember telling my stepdad that my best friend's mom gave her husband a fake lottery ticket that said that he won $1 million. And that he scratched it and he thought he won, but then she told him it was a fake ticket. I made that up just to get his reaction, his laugh. And it's something that we should not do. One of the things that really helped me with this sin was knowing that as soon as I found out that it was a sin, it made me think of, what are my lies accomplishing? Nothing. They're actually hurting. And eventually the lies come out. They always do. And it causes people then to look down on me. And I didn't like that. So I started accepting the punishment by telling the truth, no matter what situation may occur. And once I did that, I found out that I ended up finding peace in my life in a way I couldn't imagine before. And with that peace, I found a new way to start thinking of others and how they felt and how, it may hurt them if I continue. And I started viewing how I wanted to be portrayed to others. I wanted to be seen as someone that can be relied on, trusted, seem authentic. Once I started to think of these things, before I spoke to someone, I thought before I spoke, lying no longer became a sin. And it's something that you can overcome as well. And I hope that encourages you to, if you're struggling with it, to work on it, because it takes time. And then next we see that we have hands that shed innocent blood. Now, with this one, I don't think anyone here struggles with that sin. I hope not. But take note of this. God hates this sin just as much as he hates lying, just as equally. So for all those who are struggling while lying, it should now be apparent of how God sees this, compared murder to lying, exactly the same. And as humans, we seem to view things with greater or lesser view, right? We sometimes see lying at the low end of the totem pole of sin, and murder that's a big one. No. God sees it completely all the same. So much so that this is an abomination to him. Is that how it is described, as we saw in the verse 16. And he hates, and that abomination is a disgust, a full-on sickness. Again, something that we should see the same way. And having that new insight should now scare us in a way where we have still love and care for the Lord, but also have a fear that should keep us from wanting to sin the next time. Be able to prevent us from wanting to rationalize sin. So we can look back and see that the devil did all of these things. He lied and he murdered. And for one to take action in shedding innocent blood and lying, they don't have the image of God. In fact, they have the image of the devil. And the key word I want to point out in this section too is that the word innocent. Killing someone innocent is a sin. As Christians, we are told to turn the other cheek. But in some situations, we can defend ourselves and others. I will say we will need to have some wisdom and proper training to responsibly and correctly respond to certain situations. But it is something that we can do. But also in this section of one shedding innocent blood, I would say, again, with pride in their heart, it's almost like a bad recipe. You have pride in the heart, and you have a bad situation, you get a bad conclusion. And to make the matter worse, and that mixture, that recipe worse, you add drugs and alcohol, making bad decisions more easily to commit. And I repeat, the heart is the root of all of this. And as we see in this next point, it just proves that point again. A heart that devises wicked plans. In verse 18a, with the heart being the root of the haughty eyes, lying tongue, the hands that shed innocent blood, it should be to no surprise that the heart would be the source of devising wicked plans. Wicked plans could take many forms, including tricking someone into doing something bad or planning a criminal act. I would say gossip and lies are a part of this. If one plans to spread lies and gossip about someone, one must have a plan to gain something from it. And this is a scary sin, and I can see why God would hate this one. For someone to plan to do evil, to plan to hurt someone, to cheat, to plan to steal, and plan to murder, their hearts are far from God. I would say at this point, they're filled with darkness. And before I give an application to this point, I want to look at the next one, that the feet that rapidly run to evil, because both of these 2 points, I would say, have the same application point of how we can break these two sins. And so for feet that run rapidly to evil, is the way sin is portrayed in Proverbs 1, verse 15, as we saw before. It says, "My son, do not walk in the same way with them. Keep your feet from their path." So the way we walk should be not be the same as those who walk in the world. Completely different. As we are to walk in this path of righteousness. But in that same verse, we also see in chapter 1, verse 16, says, "For their feet run to evil, and they hasten to shed blood." So we all have a choice. No matter what situation we are in, there's always a good and a bad choice to make. Sometimes those good choices can be complicated. They can be hard. It may be something that we do not want to accept or do, because it may bring some punishment to us. Just as we may make a mistake and we feel like lying, but then we to do the right thing, we have to tell the truth and respect that and have understanding that we have to face whatever punishment or correction may come. And in doing so, we become right with the Lord through those actions. It may be as one who chooses to shoplift. As they go in, and they have the choice. As they're being stopped, they can fight and try to run. And I'm sure in their mind they may think, well, if I can get away, I have a chance of not facing a punishment. But the one who chooses to stay and accept the punishment for their wrong action and their wrong choices will learn from that mistake, I'm pretty sure, and I hope, to never do it again. But again, with all choices that we make, there's always an option and a reason, and a good one to choose. Now, I mentioned that the application of a heart that devises wicked plans is the same application to this one. It does because we must accept change in our heart. And it first has to be conviction. To give up pride, to give up self-desires, and start thinking of others. And most importantly, start thinking of your own soul. Once one can be honest with oneself, to take responsibility for actions, one's heart can change. It's not going to be easy, but it will get easier as life goes on. And one can choose to walk the path and not to run to evil. And so then we have false witnesses who utter lies. Now you may be thinking, well, we already covered lying. But again, you're right. God is just showing us that he double hates lying. This lie is more specific, though. It is about those who lie when they are attesting to something or about someone. This seems seen throughout the Bible. Even Jesus had personal experiences with this, as we see in Matthew 26, verses 58 through 60. It says, "But Peter was following him at a distance as far as the courtyard of the high priest, and entered in and sat down with the officers to see the outcome. Now the chief priests and the whole council kept trying to obtain false testimony against Jesus, so that they may put him to death. They did not find any, even though many false witnesses came forward. But later on, two came forward. Now, for one to give a false testimony, knowing full well the person is innocent, they don't have any evidence because they are not a witness at all, and yet they still confess as they do. They are causing an innocent man to be convicted and face punishment that he does not deserve. Jesus was innocent, and he faced punishment he did not deserve, but he still went through with it for you and me. We should understand the importance and severity of Jesus' actions in this point. He didn't have to be up there for us, but he chose to. Imagine cops coming to your house They pull you out and throw you in the back and say that you're arrested for murder. You didn't murder anyone. And you find yourself in front of a judge and jury. And witnesses are getting up, pointing at you, saying that they saw you so-and-so and you killed so-and-so. How would you feel? Imagine all the feelings that may be going on in that person. Trying to think of how are they here? They did nothing. They're innocent. So all you have to do is plead to the judge and jury. Try to do all you can to prove you are not the one who murdered and that you're innocent. Think of how scary this scenario is, as it has happened, and it may continue to happen in this world. But it happened all because people lied. Again, lying is an easy one to fall prey to, but in this situation, it is deliberate, it is planned, and it is personal. To stop this from happening, one would need to take time to think of what they're really doing to someone's life. What damage is they're causing to someone who's innocent. Hopefully this would be enough for them to not give a false testimony, but if not, then they certainly have a heart problem. And the point about lying that we talked about before should be, of course, applied here as something that of how they should stop. And then we get to our last point. One who spreads strife among brethren. Now, being in the ministry, I've heard some unfortunate situations. Some things bother me. And some things I hear, you would think, if I repeat them to you, you may think I'm talking about a group of teens having a quarrel. Little kids fighting over nothing, really. But in reality, it's congregation splitting over nothing, really. And as is mentioned before, it may be over the color of the carpet, the color of the walls. Anything that's non-doctrinal is foolish to split over, to have quarrels with, to not meet up with another congregation the next town over, down the street. There's some congregations that they had a fight decades ago over whatever it may be, and those people no longer are in either churches. And yet those two churches don't meet with each other. They don't do anything with each other. The people are gone. And no one's reaching out to one another to try to bring those two churches back together because it's been that way forever. Everyone gets stuck in their own ways. We should not allow these things to happen within the brotherhood and in the Lord's church. Even though we may have a congregation here and a few more in the Las Vegas area, we should come together and love and treat each other as brothers and sisters, as we are. It's very sad and foolish when congregations split for no reason or for pointless reasons that are not doctrinal, I should say. Now, we have to remember that this is not talking about someone starting quarrels, rumors, lies, that splits the congregation right then and there. This is something that is happening now. It may be happening now. Someone may be trying to start strife between two people already in this congregation, in this room. We don't know. But this is something that takes time. It takes time for something to escalate to a church splitting. And so this is something that we have to reflect and ask ourselves, am I the one who may be causing strife among brethren and sisters? And I also am kind of very conflicted with this one as well, to be honest, because we have to think of how we are talking to each other. As we are all very different, we all see things very differently. And of course, that comes with correction, just like any family does. So when we try to correct someone, we have to ask and think to ourselves, how can I say this with a loving heart? How can I come across to this brother and sister that I may have had bad conversations with before? How can I make this easier for them to correct them? And hopefully the one who is receiving the correction as well has an open heart and mind to know that that brother and sister is only looking out for you. That brother and sister, you may have a hateful view towards them in some way, or a negative view, I should say. But to know that that brother and sister is only caring for you. They want to see you thrive in the Lord's church. Communication in a family is essential. And again, in every family, there's going to be fights. There's going to be some miscommunication. There's going to be some quarrels. But every family reunion, you get a great big party. And then you get the drama afterwards. But it's something that here we have that is so valuable and precious, is that we all are the same mind of getting to heaven and encourage each other to reach that goal. Now, most of these sins also have a body part connected to them, if you haven't noticed yet. We have the haughty eyes. We have the lying tongue. We have the hands that shed innocent blood, and the heart that devises wicked plans, and the feet that run rapidly to evil. What we feed our bodies through our eyes will fill our hearts, and then cause an action. May that be through our mouths, through our hands, and through our feet. We have to correct the actions before it reaches our hands, our tongue, and our feet. Meaning we have to correct it at the heart. And to be able to correct it through the heart, we have to virtually, in a way, watch what we see and hear and do on a regular basis. I put it in a few different ways. Hopefully I can reach a variety of people in these ways. The heart is the life force of the body. If the heart has a problem, the whole body has a problem. Luckily, we have a spiritual way to cleanse the body. But it has to start with the heart as the source. And just as sin is hard to turn away from, as you maybe have been doing it for many years, you may get joy, you may have some form of gain or benefit from it. But the question is, are you willing to give up paradise in heaven for that sin? Is it worth it? If anyone here needs help to be right with God again, please come forward so those sins can be forgiven. And if anyone here has to put on Christ in baptism for the forgiveness of sins, please come forward as we stand and sing.